Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Infertile AF, the podcast. This is episode 155 called Kate K.
Hello, everybody. This is Allie and Blair, the co-founders of Fertility Rally, and we are here to tell you a little bit about who we are, what we do, and how we can support you on your infertility journey.
So we wanted to let you know that Fertility Rally is the membership group that we created. It's the place we wish we had when we were in the thick of it. We offer support groups. We have private Facebook groups. We have tons of events, lots of videos, blog posts, so much content. We're starting to do IRL events as well. And we want to be there for you no matter where you are on your journey.
Yeah, our favorite part, we had no idea where this would go when we started it. And our favorite part about it is watching all of our members, which is like 300 plus at this point, connect and create true lifelong friendships. We have members that are meeting up in real life. We have members that are supporting each other on Instagram. We have members that call each other their best friends now. And honestly, like that is the most rewarding thing to see. We had no idea it would go here. And so we're inviting you to join the Rally fam.
Yeah, it's such a great space. It's a safe space. We also have fun when we can. So we would love for you to be a part of it. Check us out on fertilityrally.com and on Instagram at fertilityrally. Hope to see you guys soon.
This episode is sponsored by Tara B Fertility. Dr. Tara Brandner works as an experienced doctorate nurse practitioner and fertility coach with patients worldwide. She received certification through the American Society of Reproductive Medicine and Marquette Natural Family Planning. After enduring a long road through infertility followed by a traumatic pregnancy, Tara turned her hurt into hope for others. Tara offers a personalized approach to fertility care to help you get unstuck in your TTC journey. She also offers services for a peaceful pregnancy after infertility. Tara has combined her experience as a healthcare professional and personal struggle to help couples navigate their family building path. She has a library of free downloads created by a medical professional. She offers a variety of services to fit your needs, including a one-time visit, one-to-one coaching, and the Confident Fertility Academy. To find out more or to schedule a free discovery call with Dr. Brandner, go to tarabfertility.com or direct message her on Instagram at tarabfertility. Thanks, Tara. All right, guys, I'm so excited to share this conversation today with one of my favorite people I've met in this community, Kate Knapton, who is just a sweetheart and so great and such a supporter of other people who are going through infertility. She started the company Jojii And Co, which is a beautiful jewelry company. It's all about infertility jewelry and empowering women. She makes really cool stuff. So we started working with her through Fertility Rally, and then she came to our first Fertility Rally IRL event, which you'll hear us talking about in this episode. And she and I have just become really good friends. So she's going to tell us today about her embryo adoption story and how she ended up having her two babies. So I don't want to say anything more than that. I want her to say it in her own words, but I do want to thank her so much for all the work that she does for all of you in our community. Definitely check out Jojii And Co on Instagram. And without further ado, this is Kate's infertility story. Oh my God, Kate, I can't believe we're finally doing this. I'm so happy to talk to you.
Yes, I'm so excited to be on.
Yes. So not to pick favorites, but you are definitely one of my favorite people I've met in this community. How did we even meet? Through Instagram, obviously. But when we started doing Fertility Rally Lives, you started, donating stuff because you have this amazing jewelry line, Jojii And Co.
Yes.
It's so cool. You make, infertility inspired, hopeful jewelry. It's really beautiful. I'm actually wearing a cuff that you gave me to symbolize like 1 in 8 women. It's really beautiful. So, but anyway, you started, helping Blair and I out and partnering with us. And then we got to meet you in real life when we did our Fertility Rally IRL event in January in Austin. And I had so much fun with you. Like you are just the greatest.
You
So
are so sweet.
it was great. And I'm not going to say how late we stayed up. It was like 2 something, right?
It was, yeah, I mean, it was late. I definitely needed to like rest up the next day because it was late for sure, way past my bedtime.
Right. But it was just so cool. And, I think one of the best things to come out of all of this is just honestly meeting these friends that so many of you, I feel like, are lifetime besties for real. Like,
Yeah.
This bond that we all have in this infertility community is so strong. And the coolest part about Rally IRL, I thought, was some of these women, we never would have met each other otherwise. It was like the common thread is infertility or, family building through assisted reproductive technology. And the fact that all these women from different places and different socioeconomic, situations and walks of life and different ages, we all came together and it was like a family reunion, even though we'd never met in person before,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So
it was awesome.
I'm so happy you were there with us that day. And I can't wait to do the next one.
I know. I'm like counting down. I'm like not wanting to bug you guys, but like, where are we going next? I can't wait.
We're talking about Chicago. We're talking about Napa.
I'm in for all of them.
Who knows? But yes, you better come to every single one of them.
Absolutely.
So anyway, let's talk about your story. So tell me about, did you always want to have kids growing up?
Yeah. I always wanted to be a mom. My mom is amazing and I just wanted to be like her. Her and I are very similar. And it was just something that I always thought would just happen between my mom and my sister. Like they kind of popped out kids like no problem. So I just kind of assumed like that was what was going to happen. When my husband and I were ready, we were just going to start and that was going to be our family.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's definitely something I always wanted. And when it didn't happen, it was like a shock. Like I had no clue what was going on. So
yeah.
that was really hard.
Yeah. Tell me about that. How long after you guys got married did you start to try?
So my husband and I have been together for 12 years. We just celebrated our 7th wedding anniversary on Monday.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Thank you. And we, at first, like we got married when we were like 26. So we were kind of like, let's just wait a little bit. We're still having fun. We were living in the 3rd ward in Milwaukee. So we were just kind of living our best life,
Mm-hmm.
married, going out, having fun, eating out all the time. So we kind of like eased into it, I guess. And then, we were trying without trying, if you know what I mean. Like
totally.
If it happened, it happened. So, we were kind of going and nothing was happening. And then we really started actively trying maybe like a year after we got married.
Uh-huh.
And, things just weren't happening. Every month it was the same thing, like nothing. We were, using ovulation tests, like really planning, really trying. And every month it was just the same result, like nothing was going on. So then at one of my yearly visits, I kind of mentioned this to my doctor and I'm like, it just kind of seems weird. Like I'm super, like my cycle's very normal. So
yeah. Like regular cycles.
Yeah,
this is at your GYN visit?
Yeah. Yeah. So very regular. I'm like, this just seems weird. Like this isn't normal. And the first thing she told me was to have my husband go and get checked first, which after talking to a lot of women, I heard that this was not common, which kind of bugs me because for like a woman to go in and get checked, like it's a little bit more invasive potentially. Like, a lot of times they'll start with the woman to get checked out to see what's going on. But mine told me to get my husband checked because it's a very easy, quick sample, nothing to it.
Mm-hmm.
So we did that. And
did he have any reservations about that or was he on board?
No, he had reservations. It took him months to get in.
Yeah.
We would still try. And every month he's like, well, let's just give it one more month. It just kept getting extended longer and longer.
Totally.
Waiting, which I get. Like, it's kind of a uncomfortable test to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, not to stereotype or put words into your husband's mouth, but I think for a lot of guys, they're like, I'm fine. I don't have a problem. It's not me. I think it's common for them to think that.
Yeah.
And the women have a lot of it on our shoulders,
Right. Right. So eventually a couple months later, he's finally like, okay, let's just do it. And it's a good thing and bad thing, but like having access to your medical chart these days is kind of like a catch-22 because we found out that his results before we were even able to talk to the doctor. So we got our results on a weekend, and we literally sat there all weekend with his results like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do?
So were you able to decipher the chart? Were you Googling stuff or like, what did you find out?
Google. Yeah. So we automatically, I mean, it came up 0 sperm. Like if through the test results, it was just, it said right on there, like no sperm were found. And we're like,
wow.
What? Like, this is not happening. Like, this is not right. Something isn't right. So we finally were able to get in. The doctor did had him test again. We're like, okay, maybe it was just a fluke, like whatever. No biggie. We got this. And came back again, that 0 sperm were found. So we're like, wow. Oh my gosh. Like the level of devastation that we were experiencing was over the top. Like we had never even, I did not know this was a possibility. Like in my mind, we're like, okay, if this, we're not getting pregnant, we'll just have to go do IVF with our own material. Like it's no big deal. And then to find out like that wasn't even an option was just like, I don't know how we're going to move forward. Yeah. So we kind of just rolled with that for a while, went into like do some other testing on him to check things. And then the doctor recommended doing the micro-TESE procedure, which sounds miserable.
Yes. Can you explain it to somebody who doesn't know what that is?
Okay, we're going to get a little graphic. So
yeah. And we'll say too, like, as always, this is not a medical podcast. This is just two friends talking.
Yes.
So, consult with your doctors, obviously, on any of this stuff, guys.
Absolutely. Yes. So basically, my husband described it as like cutting into their testicles and searching around for any like sperm. So it's very invasive as like, I don't have those parts, but imagining that like happening is like, makes me a little cringy. So he had that done, and it was probably like 3 months after we had like our initial samples done and found out that he didn't have sperm through the samples. But we were kind of hoping like, okay, we'll do this surgery. Maybe there's a possibility that when they go in, they'll find a bunch. And if they do, they remove it and then they'll freeze it so that we could use it for IVF.
Right.
So they went in, did the surgery, and found absolutely nothing.
Wow.
So yeah, and I'll never forget, my mom came with me to the surgery. So I had somebody there with me, and the doctor kind of called us back and put us in like this like storage closet. And in my mind, I'm like, my husband's dead. Like,
oh my God.
Yeah, I'm in a storage closet. They're like, can you please come back here? I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't know what was going on. Thankfully, it wasn't that. So
right.
But they did tell me there, that they didn't find anything. And yeah, so then I had to go back and tell my husband after he had woken up from the surgery that, he didn't even, I didn't even have to tell him. He just looked at me and was like, they didn't find anything, did they? And I'm like, no. So he was, it was just defeat. Like we just felt so defeated because
absolutely
just had never heard of something like this. So we were just no clue. And I went on the internet, like looking up, like, what are the chances of finding sperm using the micro-TESE? Like, you go on Google and you just go down this rabbit hole, and it's constant, like maybe stories that could happen, or maybe situations. And it's awful because it really doesn't bring you any sort of.
Yeah. Well, I feel like with Google, it can go both ways too. You can find kind of whatever you want, right? You could find the success stories, but you could also probably find horror stories.
Exactly.
Of things going totally wrong. And maybe someone even died, like stuff like that. So,
yeah. So that's kind of where we got like we talked to the doctor right after he was in recovery, and we're like, what do we do? Like, what's our next step? We want to have a family. And he's like, you have a 0.0% or 0.02% chance of conceiving using my husband's lack of sperm, I guess. Maybe one day it could come back, maybe not. You just don't know. And he's like, would I sit and wait for that to happen? He's like, no. So we knew that like it was going to be adoption, it was going to be donor sperm, it was going to be something other than my husband's sperm. So that was kind of like our first like dose of reality of what was to come. So yeah, we kind of just sat with that for a little bit and kind of grieved the fact that we weren't going to have genetic children using both of our DNA. So,
right. I think it's important that you say that you grieved, because it is a very valid thing to grieve. Is, we've talked about this a bunch before with people who've used donor eggs or sperm on my podcast, but, grieving the loss of your genetics. And that's not easy, because you think your life is going to go a certain way, and then you have to completely pivot because it's not going that way. So how did you guys grieve? Like, did you like talk about it a lot? Did you go to therapy? Did you have different ways of grieving? And like, how did it affect your marriage?
So he had a surgery on a Friday, and he was going back to work, I think on a Monday or Tuesday. And that weekend we cried. We didn't really talk about it. We just kind of grieved that like idea of not using his sperm. And my husband is very much a positive person. Like, he really is. He always sees the positive in almost any situation. And that was like the first weekend where like, I didn't see that. Like, it was very hard. It was devastating. It was just really hard to watch him. So I kind of had to be that person and kind of hold him up during that time. And I think it was like that Monday, he was like, okay, I took this weekend. I was sad. I cried. I was grieving. He's like, but I'm going to move forward. He was literally, I felt like it was a weekend for him. And then he was like, all right, let's keep moving forward. We're going to do this one way or another. And he's a rock star.
Yes. He sounds incredible.
He is. He's amazing. And I was just like blown away by that, because I, on the other hand, was not like that. When that Monday came and he was like, all right, I'm okay. We're going to be good. That's when I started to crumble, and he had hold me up, So we definitely, during that time, our marriage was very like, we were a team. Like, I had to hold him up during that time, and he pretty much had to hold me up all the rest of the time.
Well, it's like, you can't both fall apart at the same time.
No. And usually I mean, I don't know how I did it, but I found the strength that weekend just to like, I just had to hold him up and just, And he's done that.
That's what we do. That's, you're a badass. That's what we do.
Yes. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we were at with, finding out our diagnosis. And,
and did they tell you, next steps are going to be X, Y, and Z, or what did you guys,
they kind of like, were just, we had to go see like a counselor before we moved forward with anything else. That was just like a prerequisite. Like, we had to do that. And so we did, and we kind of talked, we were under the understanding that like this counselor was going to be like, oh, here are your next step. Let's talk about that. But it wasn't. It was very much like, okay, so what are your next steps, and are you comfortable with that? And we were prepared for that. And my husband's like, I'm not ready to move forward with anything right now. So we kind of took a break from like, for a few months. We were selling our house. We were just kind of still grieving and still accepting what was happening. And they kind of told us, you can do donor sperm, you can do just traditional adoption, or you can do embryo adoption, donation adoption. And I had never heard of that. That was like, what? Like, what is this? I know nothing about it. And my husband was kind of like, it's up to you kind of what you would like to do, because if I wanted to have children with my eggs, he was on board for using donor sperm. If I didn't, he was on board for doing embryo donation adoption. And I knew I wanted to at least try to carry a baby. So at that point, traditional adoption was just kind of like not in our radar at the moment. So it's kind of between those two.
Yeah. How strongly did you feel attached to the notion of using your own eggs?
So we started briefly like looking at donor sperm websites. And it was something that I just couldn't fully accept. I just didn't really, not that it just didn't seem to work for us. Like, I just didn't have like this urge or like need to use my eggs, I guess. I looked at it kind of like I wanted it to be either our children to be either, my husband and I together, or not, neither of ours.
So interesting that you felt that way. Yeah, I can totally understand that.
Yeah, it's just something I knew I didn't have to have my genetics to be my children.
Yeah.
So, and it was something that I don't know. It was just this feeling of like, no, it's going to be both of us, or it's going to be neither of us. So he was very on board with that. We did a lot of research, because like I said, it was something I had not really heard about. It was very new to me. I was very familiar with donor sperm.
Yeah. So tell me about like the pulling back a little bit, are you in like social media world right now? Like while this is happening, did you connect with anybody through, the internet or Facebook groups or anything like that? Like in terms of embryo adoption, or like, did you find anybody else to talk to who had specifically done it?
Yeah. So a friend of mine from work actually is the one who originally told me about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so interesting. I've never heard of it. So she connected me with her and I briefly had some conversations. And then I went on Facebook and really started looking. At the time, I was looking for like male factor infertility groups, and it just wasn't what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started looking at these embryo donation adoption groups, and I found like 2 or 3 groups that just were exactly what I needed, because it was women and men who were going through exactly what we were going through. And that was the hardest part for us, was we didn't know anybody in this situation. Like this was new territory and we just had no idea. So finding those groups was, I like saved me. I swear. Like it was just exactly what I needed. It just helped me understand more too, like what the process looked like.
Right.
But yeah, so that was like huge.
Something to be said, obviously, for the power of community and connecting with people, to make you feel less alone in these very unique situations. So what were you asking them? Like, what were the things that you wanted to find out?
One big thing was like, how do you get embryos? Or like, what is this process going to be? Like, how long does this take? Because my goal at that moment was, I want to be pregnant. I want to be pregnant now. Like, I want a baby now. And that was like my number one thought at all times. Like, how am I going to do this? And how am I going to do it as fast as possible? Because I'm very impatient and I hate not having control. So
yes,
2 qualities that do not mix well with infertility are those, because it is
so
rough.
true. Yeah.
So, just talking to them about like, it sounds so funny too. Like, where did you get your embryos?
Yeah, no, it's a valid question. And, I think I haven't talked to anybody on my show before who's gone through embryo adoption. So I'm so happy that we're doing this. And, anything that you can share that you learned that you wish, you knew then, or that you learned as you were going through it, like, please share with us.
Yeah. I think the one big thing too was through our fertility clinic, they actually have an embryo donation adoption program, which I didn't know that quite a few clinics do have that. And if yours doesn't have that, it might be a good idea to look into a clinic that does, because that's always a good place to start. Because I feel like the idea of finding embryos and like the process of like getting them transferred, it's a lot. It is very overwhelming. So like having like a program is always a good place to start, even just doing some research if you decide to go a different way, just so you can kind of like have somebody else being in control of like the legal stuff. And like they have a bank of embryos available. So kind of going through their donor selection, is a good place to kind of start, because it's very overwhelming. And that's actually where we started, was our clinic's donor embryo bank.
Okay,
so we did their program first.
Were you in Austin yet, or are you still in Wisconsin?
No, we were still in Wisconsin. Yeah,
okay.
We were in Wisconsin.
Got it. Okay. Yep. So you're connecting with some people online, which is great, asking all these questions. Were you 100% certain that was the road you were going to go down, or was there any, chance that you were still going to try to do your own eggs?
No, there was no chance. It was it was something that I was like, I felt very good about. Like, I felt like I was like, okay, this is the way we're going to go. I'm very happy going this way. It wasn't like I didn't have any doubt in my mind.
Okay. All right. So what happened next?
So we ended up going with our clinic's embryo bank, and their number one, not requirement, but the one thing that had to happen was you could only use it once. So like if we did a transfer, it didn't work, that was it. We couldn't use them again. So
why is that? Do you know?
Yeah. So they don't have a huge bank of embryos. So they were kind of, didn't want one couple to take all of them. They wanted to be able to share that great program with many different couples. So it's kind of like a one chance. If it doesn't work, I'm sorry. But yeah, which was in my mind at that moment when we were like, all right, we're going to do this. We had found a couple that we were going to use their leftover embryos. I was like, oh, I'll get pregnant. Like, no doubt. Like this will work on the first try. We're good.
Right.
So yeah, we were able to actually transfer 2 embryos though. That was kind of like their thing, that you can do 1 or 2 embryos one time and that's it.
Okay.
So we went right for the 2 embryos because we're like, okay, well, this is the only chance we have. Let's just do both.
Right.
So in my mind, I'm like, all right, I'm going to be pregnant with twins. Like,
right.
Can't wait. This is going to be perfect.
Yes. And did you meet the couple, Kate?
Like, we didn't. They were anonymous.
Okay.
That program was completely anonymous.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah.
How did it go?
Well, here we are. We're ready to go. We're doing all our medication. We're doing everything we need to get prepped. I'm like, all right, I'm going to be getting pregnant. This is great. I'm going to have twins. Done.
Mm-hmm.
And, you start testing at home. You're like, oh, there's a positive. I see a little faint line. There we go. And then you go for the beta and it's like, yeah, it's like 3. And then it was down to 0. And you're like, the level of devastation was like over the top.
Yes. Crushing.
I was so naive to think like, your first shot, that's it. You're good. You got it.
Yeah. I think a lot of people think that with IVF, not people in our community, obviously, because we've been through it, but from the outside world, it's just like, oh, it's a guarantee to get pregnant.
Yeah.
And I think so not. I thought that too, when I was, first came into this, I knew nothing.
No. And like I said, at that time, I didn't have my Instagram account. I just talked to these women on this Facebook group. And then I talked to a few other, maybe even like 1 or 2 other people that had gone through IVF. And that was it. Like, I didn't know anything. I was so naive. I was just assumed that, I'd get pregnant and I was going to have twins because we transferred 2. I thought that was it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, when we got that call, it was, just devastating. I was on the bathroom floor, like just crying, because I think the hardest thing for us was knowing that we didn't have another option at that time. Like we didn't have embryos, frozen embryos anymore. Like we had our 2 embryos we tried from the anonymous donor, and that was it. We had no clue how we were going to move forward and what we were going to do next.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was like, it was just devastating. It was awful. It was a really, really rough time.
Yeah. So how did you kind of grieve through that process? And how long did it take before you were like, okay, let's try again?
Well, so I am again, to have control of situations. And obviously when you're doing IVF and infertility, there's no control.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like on the internet, just scouring every single website I could find that dealt with embryo donation, adoption, and just grasping at straws. I would message clinics. So on this Facebook group that I was on, they have donors on there as well that are donating their embryos. So they kind of it's like a little dating site. You have your profile with how many embryos you have and about yourself. And so I was on there searching, just does anybody have any embryos, available?
Right.
So I felt like that was I feel like I didn't really have time to grieve the transfer not working, because I was so focused on okay, what's going to happen next? What do I need to do? I need to keep moving. I need to do this. I want to have a baby. And so on this Facebook group, I messaged this woman and I saw that she had 6 embryos, a little bit about herself. And I messaged her and I was just like, hey, I see you have embryos on this Facebook group. Are they, sounds so funny, are they still available?
Yeah. It is such an odd thing to have to. Did you ever in your wildest dreams think that you'd be in that situation?
No. I even talking to my family about it prior, many years ago, it was they're like, wait, so you're doing what? What is this? You're using someone else's embryo? It's just very wild.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so yeah, I messaged her and I was just like, are they still available? And unfortunately, she messaged me back and she was like, no, I'm sorry, they're not. I'm like, okay, right. Time to figure out something else. On to my next. And the next day she had messaged me back on Facebook and was like, hey, are you available to chat? I want to talk to you about my embryos. I'm like, what? What the heck? You told me last night, they're gone, whatever. So I just kind of reached out and was like, sure. What are you wanting to talk about? And she was like, our embryos, we think we'd like to donate them to you. And I was like, what? so confused because she had said, that they were already gone. So I assumed like some other family had them or whatnot. So I ended up calling her because she was like, here's my number, call me. And at first I was like, this seems weird. Like automatically, like, I get a little nervous. Like, this is weird. My husband's like, I don't know. Do you think we should call?
Right.
Yeah. It was just a little eerie, like not sure. So, but yeah, I ended up calling her and she was like, hey, so my embryos, I know I told you my embryos aren't available. She's like, but they are. What had happened was she had been trying to donate them for a while, like probably maybe like 6 months or so. And she just said, she's like, I would have these like talks with these women and I just didn't feel comfortable. Like, she's like, I just couldn't donate. Like, I didn't feel comfortable for whatever reason. Like I decided, that they weren't going to fit. And she had actually signed off for the 6 embryos to be destroyed.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Like, yeah, they were like signed off. They were so in her eyes, she's like, well, no, they're not available because they were destroyed.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, are they destroyed? And come to find out, she called the clinic and they had not yet destroyed the embryos. So she was like, stop, like, I don't want to destroy them. Hold off, for now.
Mm-hmm.
And so we talked and she was like, yeah, I just went to your profile. I felt this connection. I want you to have them. And we're
my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, like blown away. Like
Yes.
This is literally like 2 days after like our failed transfer. This isn't like a long time.
Wow.
Like, this is like 2 days later. Yeah.
Right.
Like,
so what
crazy.
did you know about her? How many kids, did she have kids already? How many kids did she have? Like, did you get into any of that?
Yeah. So they have one daughter.
Mm-hmm.
They were a little bit of an older couple when they did IVF. So this is where like my story gets, there's so many layers.
Mm-hmm.
So our donor couple used an egg donor.
Okay.
So it wasn't like the female, it wasn't like the direct contact I had. It wasn't her genetics either.
Gotcha.
They used an egg donor.
Gotcha.
With this husband's sperm.
Mm-hmm.
So they made 7 embryos and they had a daughter and she now is like maybe like 4, maybe I think she just turned 4 or is turning 4. So they had one daughter and, decided it was kind of a rough pregnancy for her, a rough birth for her. So she was like, we're done,
Mm-hmm.
So we knew, I mean, I saw pictures, I talked to her. She showed me pictures of the egg donor. Like we had a lot of contact that way. So I did know quite a bit about the family and, a little bit about the history. So we were like, okay, like, let's do it. Like, I have no clue the next steps, but let's figure this out. So yeah, that was where our 6 embryos came into play.
So you got all 6?
Yes, we had all 6. Yep.
Okay. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel comfortable talking about pricing at all? You don't have to, but I'm just curious. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So the one thing like I will say right off the bat is like, you cannot buy embryos. Like if anybody is trying to get your money to say, buy these embryos, it is illegal. You cannot buy someone else's embryos. The cost that goes into it is like, so for us and getting them transferred to our clinic, we paid the third party coordinator her fee. So that her fee covered, transferring them over, like her part of it, her help to do all of the like logistic stuff.
Okay. We
also paid for like the shipping. We had to ship the embryos.
Okay.
So costs went into that. We had to get a lawyer to write up a contract. Cause I mean, you definitely want to have a contract in place. It's very important, I feel like, because, you don't want someone to come down the road and be like, hey, those are my kids. So we paid a lawyer to do that process. We also had to do, in order to transfer the embryos into our name and get them to our clinic, we had to do like a psych evaluation in where our embryos were from. So we actually had to fly to where the embryos were, and we actually got to meet the couple and stuff. So we paid for all of that stuff. We paid for like any sort of testing that the husband had to do, or like any sort of thing that kind of came up, just so like they didn't have to pay for it. Like, you know, they were doing an amazing thing by just donating. So we made sure that there was no cost on them for any of this stuff to happen. Like we paid for it. So I would say like roughly for us to get the embryos and to do like maybe our first transfer, it's probably maybe like 10,000. So like just kind of like that price. And that doesn't include like our first transfer with the ones from the clinic and, you know, my transfers after that. But like, I would say the initial whole process of getting the embryos and then doing like our first transfer, maybe like 10,000. So they always kind of say it's a little bit less expensive than maybe doing full IVF, or I know like traditional adoption is typically even more expensive than that.
Right.
So that's kind of where that the cost is for all of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, this is so interesting, Kate. Thank you so much for sharing all this.
Yeah. And I hope I'm like making sense. Like I said, I know it's a lot of like,
no, you totally are. So, so then you've got the 6, and then when do you decide to do the next transfer?
So this is probably like November 2017, maybe. So we were like, they were getting shipped. We had signed up everything. Everything was great. And they were shipping. And I was probably the most annoying patient to my nurse at my clinic. But I was like, okay, so like, when can I start? Like, when can we get started? I want to get like pregnant. Let's do this. You know, it was almost the end of 2017. I'm like, this is going to be my year. Like, it has been a shitty start to this year. And we're going to get pregnant. So bugged the crap out of her. And finally she's like, okay, they're shipping. Let's just start, you know, your prep cycle and then get going. So yeah, we started that November with like my prep, and then December, like, oh man, maybe like 18, 17, somewhere around there, we did our transfer with our embryos from the second batch now. So like the 6 embryos that we got from the woman on Facebook, we did our first transfer. Yes.
And how did you decide what exactly to transfer? Were they like graded or?
Yes. So our embryos, she told us, she's like, they're all amazing grades and they're all the same. So all 6 embryos were graded the exact same.
Okay.
So I always love that, because I'm always like, literally our like destiny is in the hands of the embryologist. Like,
right.
It's kind of like, okay, which one are we going to pick today? Because they're all the same. It doesn't matter. We don't know the genders. They're just all graded the exact same. So it's kind of like just picking one and putting it in. So I always love that, because I'm like, it's totally up to this embryologist.
Right. What about the genders?
We do not know the genders. They didn't do any testing or anything, just because they used an egg donor. So typically, you know, egg donors have pretty good, I would say that there's pretty good like statistics of using an egg donor. So they didn't feel they needed to do the testing. So we didn't know genders or anything. We just, embryologist picked one and put it in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
it worked. I tested, I think must have been either, of course I had to test early. I'm definitely that one.
Yes.
I am that infertile that will test like 4 days after, 5 days after. I can't help it. And then I test, you know, every day after.
Understandable.
Yes. So I tested, and it was very faint, and I brought my husband, and like, I think we're pregnant. And it was just, you know, overjoy. Like, I couldn't believe it. I had never seen like a good, solid, positive line. And I was like, this is it. Like, we are going to be pregnant. We are pregnant, and we are going to hopefully stay pregnant.
Right.
So, yeah. And we did. We had our baby. Yeah.
So how was the pregnancy, and how did it feel after, you know, having the one that did not work?
So the pregnancy itself was perfect. I mean, I didn't have any complications. Everything was, you know, a typical pregnancy. It was great. My anxiety, on the other hand, was so over the top and crippling. It was, that's what made it miserable. Like, it was just constant fear of losing the baby, of, you know, and I had never been pregnant. So like, I didn't know what it meant, like things that you go through when you're pregnant, like, you know, for example, like bleeding. Like, I didn't know that can still happen when you're pregnant. Like all those things that you're like, what? Like, I'm not supposed to be, this isn't supposed to be happening.
Right.
So
sorry, I forgot to ask, just backtracking a little bit. Did you ever think about transferring 2, or since you had the 6, were you like, let's just do 1 at a time?
My doctor for these ones was like, let's just do 1. Like,
okay.
They felt pretty confident in it. And the fact that we had quite a few extra, they were like, let's just do 1 at a time and see where that goes. So,
okay.
Yeah. But yeah, the pregnancy itself it's scary. It is
totally
terrifying.
Yeah. We talk about that a lot. Is just, we were talking about this in our group last night. Somebody was saying like they're pregnant, but they're just waiting to have a miscarriage because they've had so many before. And that's the headspace you're in when you've gone through loss. And it's just experiencing that joy is just not a thing for so many people. And it sucks, infertility robs that from you. And, somebody was saying she told her parents and she was hoping it was going to be this really joyous announcement, but she couldn't stop crying. And it was, not what she was expecting it to be. And it's just, it's hard.
It's that fear. It's just that fear that doesn't go away. And it really doesn't go away until you finally have that baby in your arms after they're born and you can finally just breathe like a little sigh of relief. It's
right.
Yeah. It's not fun. I'm not gonna lie.
So you had your little girl first, right?
Yes, Josephine. Yep, she's born in September 2018.
Oh, so Jojii And Co is that named after her? Obviously,
it is. For some reason, my husband and I just couldn't stop calling her Jojii. Like it was just like we would just call her Jojii. So I was like,
so cute.
I'm gonna honor her and call my little business that because she's a spicy little firecracker. She's great.
I bet she's so cute. Okay. So then this is not the end of your story because spoiler alert, you do have a little guy as well.
I do, yes.
So when did you decide to do it again?
So Josie was like 13 months. I'm like, let's do it again. It was August of the following year, I think. I don't know. Yeah, I think that sounds right.
Mm-hmm.
And we transferred. And unfortunately, again, that one, it failed. It didn't work, which was devastating, but it did feel not quite as heavy. I think because we had our daughter, like it was just, it was awful. It still was, but it still was like just a little bit like, okay, like at least we have, 4 more embryos. We can try again.
Right.
The pain doesn't go away, but having my daughter, it was like, well, at least I have my daughter. You try to be like grateful in that moment, even though it's really hard sometimes. Like, it still sucks. It's not like, it's just like, oh, it sucks. It was really hard.
Yeah. And I think that, with people who, I guess technically that would be a kind of secondary infertility situation. Right. People who've gone through that, including myself, I always want to tell people that it's okay to have this mix of emotions. Like you're so thrilled that you have your baby or your children, but you're so sad that you can't have another one. And that's okay. I think that we just need to normalize that and support each other in our decisions. Cause sometimes, when people already have kids that, it's people can be tough and say things that are hurtful and you should be grateful for what you have and things like that. And you just want to be like, fuck you.
Exactly. Like seriously, like it's, it just is like, it doesn't take away from your feelings and your pain. Like, of course you're grateful for your other child. Right. Like that gratitude it doesn't go anywhere, but at the same time, like, yeah, you still have that like right to be like, I want another baby. And I didn't, it sucks when you can't. Like it's, no, I agree. Yeah. That just, I said, sometimes people, you're just like, gosh,
I know.
I don't know.
That's what I love about your Instagram, and everybody should go follow her Instagram at Jojii And Co. And, you do a lot of posts about just the real feelings that people go through and no bullshit and all that. And I love your posts.
Oh, thanks. I know. I said, I try to, keep them like that. Cause it's like, and I've had a lot of people be like, reach out to me who haven't gone through infertility and are like, damn, like, thanks for saying that. Like, I probably said that to somebody and it's, you didn't realize how hurtful it could be. It's
right.
It's kind of the whole point of what I wanted to do too, was just be like, yeah,
totally.
What you say is not okay. Like you gotta be able to reel it in. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So then back to your story.
Yes.
So then you did another transfer?
Yep. And we did it back to back. So we transferred then in October and found it was like, must have been right around like Halloween. And I was cleaning and my husband was like doing the dishes and my daughter was playing. And I'm like, I need to test. Like it just came out of nowhere. I'm like, I have to test right now. And I did. And it was like 4 days past our transfer. So it was really early. And there was a really nice line. And then they just kept, testing every day since. And then, yeah, we had my little boy in July.
Oh, wow.
My little Bennett.
Yes. An adorable little guy as well. So how old are they both now? I'm not good at math, Kate.
Jojii. Jojii is like, she'll be 3.5. And then Benny is like 18 months, 19 months. So a little over a year and a half.
Okay. You definitely don't need to get into this at all because it can be complicated. But, when you have embryos left, which you have a couple, right?
Yep.
Is there that, that I feel like we talked about this at Rally Live a little bit, but off the record. So if you don't want to go into it, I'll cut this part out. But, what do you decide like next steps wise, right? Like it's tricky when you've got some embryos in the bank.
Yeah. Yeah. And my husband and I are actually like, we often have this conversation, like, okay, like, what are we going to do? What's kind of our next step? My son is very active. He is very much a boy and he has no fear. And that has been really hard for me because I'm like, how am I going to do this again if we decide to do this? Because he is just a handful. So we've been kind of like, this is great. We have, a boy and a girl. We're very happy. But to kind of like backtrack a little bit, one thing my donor kind of asked was, once you have them, like, it's totally up to you what you do, but I would really like, just you guys to have the embryos, like whether or not, you donate, whatever happens to them after. She's like, I really would like them just to be yours. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll see. Like once they're ours, it's all up to us. And so that was kind of like, was in the back of my head, and we have 3 left over. And in April of 2020, my donor passed away unexpectedly.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah. So she, it's always something that kind of just sits in the back of my mind. Like those were kind of her wishes. We would like to maybe have another one. Do we just kind of see what happens? Just kind of honor her because that was something that she wanted. And, I know us donating would be so amazing to another couple, but also like, we could go through all 3 embryos and none of the transfers work. And, so we're just kind of at like those crossroads of like our next steps. And, they always say like, you're never going to like regret having another one. You're not going to have like those feelings like, oh man, that number 3, like, darn, like, so we know even if we do it, like, it'll be amazing. And it's just, we're just kind of maybe now trying to figure out like when we'll do it, I don't know. Yeah. It's hard. It's really hard. And just knowing that that's what she wanted is something that kind of weighs on us. Cause she is the reason we have our kids today. And
absolutely
she is the reason why, we are able to even have that opportunity to go for more children. So she's even though she's gone, from earth, she still like lives in my heart because she's just the reason why we're parents. And it's hard to not honor what her wishes are. But again, those are things that we'll kind of just have to like play out and see what happens.
Yes. Yeah. Before we wrap, I would love for you to say, tell us a little bit more in terms of embryo donation, adoption. What do you wish that, people knew about it? Are there any like myths surrounding it that you want to bust, or like anything you wish you had known, or somebody that's listening that might want to go down this path? What do they need to know? Just a couple quick, final thoughts.
Sure. I think the biggest thing for me going through this, was even when I was pregnant with my daughter, my first child, I had these feelings of like, what if I don't connect with her? What if there's like, she's born and like, I don't have that connection that I assumed I would have with a genetic child. And even until I swear the day before she was born, I would just cry like, what if? That horrible, like, what if question. And I can fully say with 100%, the second I heard her cry, it was game over. Like it was, she is mine. That connection was there instantly. You know, that is a huge, maybe not even a myth, but just maybe a fear that people have of like, will I connect? And yes, like the connection is so deep. It is so deep and it's there. And, you know, I often get the question of, do you wish you could still have your own genetic children? Or like, do you wonder what they would be like? And of course I wonder what they would be like. You know, I oftentimes will find myself like, oh, I wonder if they'd have my chin or, you know, my eye color, whatever. And I have no like desire for that. I mean, if my husband and I spontaneously got pregnant, like I wouldn't be sad, but it would also be like kind of devastating because like, I love my kids. Like my kids have dark brown eyes from neither one of my husband and I, and they just, you know, they're their own little people that we love them so much for who they are. And even though they're not genetically related, like they are so much a part of us and so loved by everybody in our family that no, I don't have any of those like lingering desires or wishes of having my own genetic children. It's just, it's not there. Like no, it's not. So
I thought I was going to get through this without tearing up, but you just made me totally tear up because it's just so, the love is palpable. And I'm just looking through your Instagram at these pictures of your beautiful family. Just to clear up like the genetics question. So they are genetically 100% related, right? Okay.
Yep.
Siblings.
They are 100%
it's so
siblings. Yep.
interesting. So when do you think you'll talk to them about this, or have you started to kind of introduce it through like, there's some wonderful children's books and, you know, just telling them their stories?
Yeah. So we have in their rooms, we have their little embryo picture from the transfer. Yeah. And then they always say like donated embryos are like known as snowflakes. That's kind of like their big thing. So cool. I have a snowflake in each of their rooms next to their picture. Yeah. And we just kind of talk like, you know, they're 3 and 1. So it'll be something that I want them to just kind of grow up knowing, like just kind of knowing their story. I'm not going to one day drop a bomb and, you know, be like, this is, you know, how you came to be. Right. I just want them to grow up kind of knowing their situation, what kind of happened. And there are so many great children's books out there. My husband and I have always had like a goal or like a dream of writing our own.
Do it.
Time gets in the way.
I know, right?
So that's kind of like our thing, like eventually. But a couple months ago, I was sitting and looking through a book I kind of wrote during our journey and added pictures and everything. And Jojii sat next to me and was just so interested in it. And I was just like, this is so cool. Like, I can't wait to one day show her this, like show her our journey that I wrote and took pictures of and documented all of this stuff. So, yeah, I'm excited to show her that one day. But yeah, I just kind of want them to grow up just knowing like, you know, this is where we came from. And the good thing with today's world too, is like, this is becoming very normal. You know, there's so many different ways to have families, you know, 2 moms, 2 dads, whatever, single parents, you know, it's just becoming more normal, I guess. Yeah.
I think the beautiful thing about, you know, all of our situations is like these kids were so wanted and they're so loved. And how cool is that? It doesn't get much cooler than that.
It really doesn't. No, they're amazing.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening. Kate, you're the best. Definitely check out Jojii And Co, guys, for some really cool jewelry. Makes great gifts for people who are going through this. And also, as always, please check out Fertility Rally. If you guys are looking for more support, we have a website full of lots of resources and information. And if you do want to become a member, you have access to our support groups and our private Facebook groups and our family, which is just this incredible community of women from all over the world going through all different sorts of things. So we are over 300 strong. We're hoping to get even bigger. We want to help as many people as we can. So check us out at fertilityrally.com or on Instagram at fertilityrally. And always let me know if you have any questions or you need more info. Okay, talk to you guys next time. Thanks.